So today we have, speaking on teamwork, Director Joe Xavier from the Department of Rehabilitation. Joe has 28 years experience in business and public administration, as well as many years participating in advocacy and community organizations. In 2010, Joe was appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger to serve as the Deputy Director for Specialized Services Division at DOR, where he was responsible for the Blind Field Services, the Orientation Center for the Blind, the Older Individuals Who Are Blind program, the Deaf and Hard of Hearing section, and the Business Enterprises program. In addition to his role as director, Joe has direct executive responsibility with 7 of the 9 DOR formal advisory bodies. Please welcome to the stage Director Joe Xavier.
Well, can you guys hear me okay with this? Good morning. Wow, you guys got a full house here. This is wonderful. I was just sharing before I get started here earlier how it's impressive to have this kind of opportunity. We certainly didn't have this 100 years ago when I was having the opportunity to be an analyst. So it's an honor to be here. One of the highlights of my responsibilities as a director is when I have the opportunity to engage with either community and or our staff and to have an opportunity to share and learn and hear from our various participants and partners. And so it's great to have an opportunity to be here today with you to share a little bit of my experience with you and some things you might want to consider in your career. But let me take a moment and thank agency and acknowledge them for the wisdom to establish this forum, to bring all of you together, for you to have the opportunity to hear from our various leaders, and more importantly, for you to have the opportunity to interact with each other and the opportunity to reflect on the discussions with each other and learn from that. Thank you for stepping up. Thank you for raising your hand and saying, yes, I'm interested, I'd like to come and participate and to learn. Let me ask you a few questions. And if you don't have something to write on, a pen on your hand or something, but let me ask you a few questions that you might want to reflect on. Why are you here today? Why were you here a week ago? When do you start interviewing for your manager's position? I'm assuming that the reason you're here is you're interested in advancing your career, possibly pursuing a managerial position of sorts. When does that interview begin? Who was your best boss? Who was your best boss? Why were they your best boss? Who was your worst boss? Who was the boss that you said, I never would like to work for that person again? And why were they your worst boss? And the most important question on top of those two is, whose behavior does yours most resemble? Not who do you want it to look like, but who does it most resemble? How do you ensure that you are developing your leadership talents? These are all questions you should be asking yourselves fairly routinely. If you take the opportunity to ask yourselves those questions, you'll take the opportunity to identify ways that you can continue to grow and improve and be ready for that leadership opportunity. A quote that resonated with me many years ago: you do not get what you want, you get what you work for. You don't get what you want, you get what you work for. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a sports fan. Root for the Niners, root for the Giants, and any team that plays against the Dodgers. So, and there's an awful lot of parallel with sports and teams. For those of you who don't know, the Giants in 2010, a team out of nowhere, won the World Series. It was a remarkable season, and very, very few people would have picked them to win. I do know one person that picked them to win. My wife, she was in Vegas. She put $20 that the Giants would win the World Series. She came home and told me that. I thought, oh, there goes $20. They won. It was a great payout, okay? But one of the things that resonated with me about that season was not only the accomplishment that they had had throughout that year, but when they won the World Series, everybody was being interviewed. And I remember one of the coaches being interviewed, and the question went along the lines of, you know, you don't have the superstars or the best players, and yet you won. And the answer was, it's not the team with the best players that wins, it's a team that plays the best that wins. That applies to all of the teams that you have been on. That applies to all the teams that you will be on. So, what does team mean? What does team mean? Now, I'm going to share with you some thoughts here. And as you're listening to these, identify which one most resonates with you. Together, everyone accomplishes more. The exceptional analyst matters. Together, everyone achieves magic. Talent, enrichment, accelerating minds. Teach, encourage, and model. Together, efforts are made. Together, everyone accomplishes the mission. Teaching, excellence, attitude, and motivation. Together, everyone always matters. Trust, energy, attitude, and motivation. Teach, encourage, assist, and mentor. Think about which one of those most resonates with you, and it'll speak to you a little bit about what your style may look like. The Gallup report, one of the Gallup reports, reported that 65% of people that leave their job because of their manager. 65% leave because of their manager. What do all leaders have in common? What do all leaders have in common as it applies to teams? One, it's the challenge of getting the most out of our teams, which includes 3 key variables: the leader's needs, the organization's atmosphere, and the team's potential competency. How do each of you, as a leader, affect each of those 3 things? You have an impact on every single one of those. And if you think about that in context of the 65% that leave because of managers, you're going to be key in setting each of those 3 stages for the teams you'll have responsibility for. So let me talk to you a little bit about my experience and the teams that I've participated on, either as a team member and as a lead of the team. Work groups and projects. Anybody in here who hasn't been involved in a work group or a project? I hope no hands went up, okay? That's a team. No matter how you frame it, you brought a group of people together to participate in a common effort to achieving a common goal. Unit, section, whether you're a supervisor, a manager, or a participant. Common goal, common purpose for that unit, for that section. I participated in those, as I'm sure you have. How will you, as leaders of the unit or the section, address those 3 things that I pointed out earlier? How do you participate on that team today? What is your attitude? What is your motivation? How do you engage with your team members? How about cross-functional teams? I'm sure there's some people in this room that sit where we would call on the administrative side of the house. And there are people in here that sit on the program services side of the house. Ever any angst between the 2 teams? A little pull and tug? I'm right, no, I'm right. But are we really not part of the same team? But yet we behave at times, we treat those occurrences at times as if they're 2 separate teams, and they're not. How do we identify ourselves on that team? Are we looking for the opportunity for solution to bring the perspectives together, or are we in fact siloed and thinking about it, you know, if these people from program, if they could only understand the requirements of administration, life would be so much easier. If these people in program could only do this, people in program, God, If somebody would focus on something other than compliance, we could actually get something done. Yeah, it resonates, huh? Well, did it ever occur to us that we can't have one without the other? That they're the opposite sides of the same coin, where goes one, goes the other, up or down? How do we, as team members, acknowledge both of those and make sure that they're working in unison as opposed to each other? I often, when I go out in the field, we have 85 district offices throughout the field, and sometimes somebody will say, well, admin this and that and the other. I said, you know, we can do away with admin altogether right now. And they light up, and I said, yeah, if you don't need any money. Okay, if you don't need any money, you don't need any staffing, we can do away with that. Same thing with admin. So there's a responsibility for us as leaders of teams to acknowledge the need that exists and to be able to bring those together in the way that is unifying and achieves that common purpose, that common goal. Agency and interdepartmental. One could argue that today we have a huge team in this room. We have an agency team that crosses all of our 12 departments. You guys are a team. You're forging the next ranks of our leadership. How are you working as a team? How are you participating in the conversations, whether it's in a formal conversation with the breakout sections or the informal conversations at the lunch table? How are you contributing to that team atmosphere? Team composition. What do I look for when I'm putting a team together or when I'm a member of a team? Experience, background, experience of diversity, diversity of experience. One of the things that always scares me is when we have a team of all super thinkers, super analysts, because I know we're going to be missing something. I love to see a team that has, you know, entry-level staff on it, that it has leadership staff on it, that it has that mid-level analyst, whether they're staff or an associate, because it's that diversity of experience, both in the workforce as well as in life, that brings that full perspective to the conversation. Styles and personalities. You ever meet somebody who's a thinker? You tell them something and they just got to process it through. How about somebody who, the minute you say something, they have a solution? How about somebody that's going to challenge you? Every single one of those is invaluable to a well-rounded team. They have a skill, they have a talent to contribute, but if they're not sitting at the table, they can't bring that to the table, and it's very likely we're going to miss something. Interests of opinions and perspectives. If you have someone that is just going to sit there and rubber stamp what I'm saying, it scares the heck out of me. Because I'm not getting feedback on what I'm thinking. The organization is not benefiting from a strong, well-thought-through product. Do you, as team members, encourage that one person who you can tell is not quite buying into the idea to put that on the table? Because maybe there's something to it, and maybe they just need to be able to put that out there, and everybody goes, oh, we hadn't thought about that, okay? That's a lost opportunity. And then, of course, competencies. What do we need from the individuals on the teams? What are the talents that we need? Do we need people that are whizzes at looking at numbers and be able to crunch those? Do we need people that can think outside of the box and find opportunity where everybody else is seeing obstacles? So that diversity of competency, and you really have to identify what that team needs and bring that full range to your team. My role on the team. Here are some of the things that I have encountered both as a participant and as a team leader, and here are some of the things that I've done to address them. Here's a question I ask myself at the beginning of every team that I'm on. And by the way, the newest team that I'm on is the director for the Department of Rehabilitation, is an executive team for our department, and the agency director's team for our secretary and our agency staff. So the question I ask myself is, what does my boss want from me? What results do I need to deliver? What do they want from me? What do they need from me? What do I need to deliver? What are the assumable and unassumable risks? No matter what team you're on, there are risks that will be assumable, there are risks that will not be assumable, and there will be perspectives on both of those. So one of my responsibilities is to be sure that I have a good understanding of what that is, that I know where I can push the envelope, when I should push the envelope, and what I should guard against pushing the envelope too far. Promote the team and the organization. My responsibility is not to promote myself. My responsibility is not to tell the secretary how good I am. It was not to tell my director how good I was. It was not to tell my deputy how good I was or my manager. It was to promote the team and promote the organization. And that is something that I hold very dear. Never was about me. It never was about what I accomplished. It was always about what the team accomplished. Having a shared vision, a shared purpose, a shared outcome. I can tell you that teams that I've been on, teams that I've been asked to step into, when there's a lack of clarity about the vision, the purpose, and the outcome, there's usually a lot of disgruntled, sitting back, sometimes anxious people. We need to be clear. And too many times, we fail to make the time to have that conversation up front about why are we here? What do they need from us? What are the results that we're trying to accomplish? And when that isn't clear, then the old adage goes that if you don't know where you're going, any road will do. If you don't know what you're trying to accomplish, then any conversation will work. And the frustrations materialize when you're not making progress and you're not getting anywhere. And too many times, we don't ask that question. Can you step back a second and just tell me what it is we're trying to accomplish? What's the outcome that we're looking for? And every single time that I've done that, somebody else in the room will say, oh, thank you for asking that, because I was having trouble understanding that also. If we make the time to have those kinds of conversations up front, even when we don't have that time, you'll save a whole lot more on time at the end, and a whole lot more on time on resetting expectations and resetting what it is you're trying to accomplish. Expert. It is not my job to be the expert on any team. It is my job to bring my best to the team. But it is my job, as it is your job, to develop the expertise and to dig out the expertise of every single person on your team. And the ability to address mistakes. Anybody here ever see a bad reaction to somebody who made a mistake? What are the chances that person's going to make another mistake? They're going to go right back into their corner and say, I'm taking this safe, because I'm not taking that kind of reaction again. There's a distinction to be made between how you handle mistakes. And I tell everyone, I don't care about mistakes. Build a bridge, get over it, and move on. But let's be clear that there's a distinction between making a mistake and learning from that mistake, and I think this thing started speaking louder, and making the same mistake every Monday morning. If you are making the same mistake every Monday morning, that's not a mistake. That's now carelessness, and let's address that. Coaching, making the time to know every team member. What resonates with them? How do they learn? What is their personality? What motivates them? I'll tell you a quick story. I had a guy that was training with me years ago. Years ago, back like in the mid to late 80s. And at work, this guy walked very deliberately, very slowly. And we really were questioning this guy's motivation. It's like, wow, he's got two speeds, slow and slower. And one day we left work about the same time, and we hit the sidewalk, and he took off like a shotgun. I thought, what the heck? It actually spooked me. And I said, Gunner, what's going on? He goes, nothing, I'm just headed home. Well, come to find out, the Gunner was an avid runner. And when he took off, he took off. Well, until I understood what motivated him, I really did not have the ability to have an effective conversation with him about his approach and how he came across when he was doing his other duties. Identify the talent. Do you ever work on a team? Do you ever have a colleague that you're kind of scratching your head? You're going, what is this person really, what are they good at? What do they do? Your job is not to say, well, they're no good at anything, because I don't buy that. They're good at something. Your job is to find out what is that. And your job is to find out what's that hidden talent and find a way to dig it out of them. Attitude. Let me tell you that as a director, I am watched by every single person, all 2,000 staff in our organization. I'm watched by you sitting in this audience. I'm watched by you when I'm out in the community. I'm watched by our community. Attitude, how we handle ourselves, how we handle adversity, how we handle success, how we handle good days, bad days, and everything else in between. People will key off of you as team members and as leaders, and it is your responsibility to set that right attitude. And you don't do it by your words. You do it by your actions. You do it by what people observe you doing. One of the questions I asked earlier, when does your interview for your manager position begin? For anyone who thinks it begins when you submit the application, good luck. You're way too late. It's already began, folks. It began the day you took the job you're in right now. You are being interviewed. You're being watched. Your attitude, your approach, your conversation, your lack of. Somebody is paying attention to what you're doing. And that will reflect on your opportunity for your next promotion. Communication. Being authentic. Whether you're a team member or whether you are a lead or director, communication, communication, communication. I know you guys have a whole session on communication, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. But I do want to share a story of an event that occurred with me that really solidified the value and the need for communication. I took over a section back in 2005. And when I took over that section, I went in and energized, and I'm ready to go. And one of my practices had always been to say good morning to everyone. And one of the people that worked in that section, had a very unique job, and that job was essentially photocopying and shredding on a mass level all day, every day. Person's been doing it for nearly 40 years. When I walked into the space that they occupied, and it was a closed room because of the noise that the equipment generated, knocked on the door, said good morning, and I got a Oh, okay. For the next 3 or 4 days, good morning, All I got was a grunt. I thought, I don't have time for this. I got a lot of work to do. And as I was seeing that, and I just started thinking about it, I said, wait a minute. That's one of my team. What am I missing? And I resolved right then and there that that person was going to say good morning to me if it took 10 years. It didn't take 10 years, but it took a lot more than 10 days. But every single morning, I knocked on the door, I said good morning. What that person wanted to know is what I really cared about. If I cared about her or just saying good morning to check off the box. When she learned that I actually cared and I meant good morning, today she can spot me anywhere. And she will engage me in conversation, and most other people, she will just ignore them. She learned I cared. She learned that I would take the time to listen, that I took interest in her, her family. I took interest in the work she did and valued it. And she became a very, very dependable team member for me. Listener. Listening is a huge skill. And it's one that I must tell you that's taken me quite some time to develop, and frankly, many will argue I still haven't mastered it. I would agree with that. One of the teams that I had the responsibility of leading was moving our central office from out on Evergreen by the Royal Oaks Post Office into downtown Sacramento. And so when I started leading that effort, and we'd have meetings of cross disciplines, included our business services, included contracts, information technology, et cetera. One of the things that I truly believe in, that I can deal with the issues that I'm aware of. It's the ones I don't know that scare me, because I don't know what will come up. I don't know how to react to them. So one of my practice is, in every group that I lead, is to always ask the question, what is it that we have not thought of, that we have not talked about, that is a consideration or a concern we should be thinking of? So at the end of the meeting, I would ask that question, and one of the ladies would raise her hand and say, what happens if the power fails? And I'm thinking, huh? This went on for 3 or 4 meetings. Same question every time, 3 or 4 weeks in a row. What happens if the power fails? And I kept thinking, what is it with this lady? It's a brand new building. Why is she worried about the power failing? And it dawned on me that I wasn't listening. And so I said to my assistant and said, hey, we keep getting this question, what happens when the power fails? My assistant rolled her eyes and said, I know. I have no idea why they keep asking that. I said, we're not listening. Because, really, when you think about it, everything is new, right? Yeah, that's why it's not a concern. I said, but let me ask you this question. What happens with one of these new systems doesn't work like it's supposed to? Who do we call? Do we call the people that put it in because it's under warranty? Do we call DGS because it's their building? Do we call the who? And she goes, oh, you don't know. I said, okay. So we went and had that conversation, and we figured out who we're going to call. We moved into the building. Within the week, the power failed. Banks of workstations on one floor all went dead. And my assistant came and said, I can't believe this. I said, I know. She goes, yeah, let me go call them. She went and called the person that had been designated by the entire construction team, and I said, no, it's not my job. You got to call so-and-so. She goes, we had that conversation. Listening, folks. You got to listen, and don't just listen to the words. Listen to what that person is getting at. That's your responsibility. Delegation. As a manager, here's a question that I would ask you. Do you have more staff than you need to get the job done? Do you have more time on your hands than you need? Do you find it easier to do the work than to teach somebody how to do the work? If you answer yes to any of those questions, you better step back and think about it. I hear this from managers over and over, and this is huge to teams. It's huge to team performance. It's easier for me to do it than teach them how to do it. Go back to developing the expertise of your team. If Bruce Bochy had found it easier to be the catcher than teach Buster Posey how to be the catcher, the Giants wouldn't be in the World Series. If Greg Popovich had found it easier to be the point guard instead of Kyomi Leonard, they never would have made it and won the basketball championships. Your job as a leader is not to be the best. It's to develop your staff. Find the time. Teach them how to do it. What am I doing somebody else could be doing? It's a question I ask myself routinely. You see teams repeatedly where 2 or 3 people are saddled with all the work. Nobody else is. Do you guys ever have that experience? Gee, I wonder where that is. What's the leader looking at? Is the leader looking at who's got time, who doesn't have time? Is the leader looking at how they're spending their time? What should I be doing that I'm not doing? What should you as a leader be doing that you're not doing? How about training your staff, developing the expertise, handing off the work, figuring out what's motivating them and not? Collaboration, 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 collaboration. It's huge. And collaboration is not telling people, it's not telling the admin how to do it, it's asking admin how to do it. It's not admin telling program how to do the checklist, it's asking program why the checklist isn't working. Collaboration is asking and listening and then doing something with that, even if it's getting back to the community, the program, the team that you're working with and saying, you know what, we've looked at this. We don't think we should go that way, and here's the reason why. How are people looking at the issue? I shared with you several lenses already. I shared with you Gloria's lens when I said good morning. I shared with you Liz's lens when she asked about the power. One of the things that I have the responsibility to do, and you have the responsibility to do on a team, is to look at the issues from multiple lenses. Go back to the composition of team. We want people with different lenses to look at the issue. You want people with different lenses to be able to say, I see it from this angle, and here's what I'm seeing. It's a tremendous benefit to the outcome, to the work that we're doing. Commitment and compliance. Distinguish between achieving commitment and compliance, okay? Because somebody who is committed will give you a whole lot more effort, energy, and output than somebody who's just compliant. You know, as a manager, you're going to worry about whether the person showed up at 8:01 when they should have showed up at 8 o'clock, okay? And I'm going to guarantee you that the people who show up at 8:01, sometimes they're there till 5:30. And I'm going to guarantee you that you're going to have people who are just focused on, oh, no, you can't say anything because I got here at 8 o'clock. But come 4:59, get the heck out of the way. You'll walk right over you getting out the door. Find that commitment. Inspire those individuals to greatness. It's not to say that they should be working overtime. That's not the message. The message is when you can achieve commitment from your teams, you're going to achieve great things. Work culture that attracts and retains quality people. I want to share a story, and I want to share some tips from you from a book that I read that I think is just an excellent read about teams. Easy, excellent, applicable read. And let me tell you the story first. Captain Abrashoff took over the worst vessel in the Navy, and he had nowhere to go but up. One of the stories that Captain Abrashoff tells, on the Navy ship, officers have their own line for meals, their own dining room for meals. Any of you who've served in the Navy probably know that. On his ship, he went down for meal. And instead of standing in the officer's line, he went and stood in line with the crew. He went to the back of the line and stood in line. And he's watching his officers, and they're all getting a bit nervous because the captain is now standing at the back of the line with the crew. And so he could see them figuring out who's going to get the short straw to go back there and tell him that he didn't have to stand in line. And the guy that got the short straw went back there and said, Captain, you don't have to stand in line. You can go over here and get in line with the officers. And he goes, that's okay, I'll wait back here. That way, if they run out of food, I'll be the one that goes without. So the poor guy that got the short straw now was stuck. Does he stay back there with the captain, or does he go get back in line with the officers? Well, the fact that he says, quite wise of him, I better stay here with the captain, now everybody else started getting nervous, like, oh, now what happened? So they get their meal, they go into the dining room, and the officers went to the officers' dining room, and the officer that was with the captain was ahead of him, went to the officers' dining room. The captain went to the crew's dining room, went, found a table, sat down with a group of sailors, and started engaging in conversation, and pretty soon they're laughing and carrying on. What do you think happened on that ship? The officers' dining room went away. All the officers all of a sudden started engaging with the crew in every way and did not segregate themselves from that crew. Here is a couple of the highlights of things to think about from that book. It's called It's Your Ship. It's Your Ship is the title of the book. I would recommend you read it because it will be invaluable to you in your careers. Here are the highlights. Lead by example. Listen aggressively. Communicate purpose and meaning. Create a climate of trust. Look for results, not salutes. Is this about me or the organization? Take calculated risks. Go beyond standard procedure. Build up your people. Generate unity. Improve your people's quality of life. So I'll share one more story with you, and then stop and take questions, and if you don't have any, I can ask you some. Let me share a story with you about the Chinese bamboo tree. By the way, Nate, are we doing okay on time? Oh, I haven't got the hook, I guess. We're good, okay. So, the Chinese bamboo tree. It's a seed. The first year, you plant it, and you water it, and you fertilize it, and nothing happens. The second year, you plant it, you water it, you fertilize it, you water it, and you fertilize it, nothing happens. In the third year, you water, fertilize, nothing happens. And in the fourth year, you do this again, and by now you're saying, why am I watering and fertilizing something that isn't growing? In the fifth year, during the course of a few weeks, it grows 90 feet. How long does it take a Chinese bamboo tree to grow 90 feet? How long would it have taken if the watering and fertilizing would have stopped at some point? When we approach a project, when we develop a skill, we expect to get from 0 to 90 feet in 90 seconds. That's not how it works. It takes a lot of practice. It takes tenacity. It takes discipline. It takes persistence. And as leaders, you will be called upon every single time to exercise those over and over and over again. Leading teams is all about making sure that the team brings those values to the work that they're doing. So here's a couple of questions for you to reflect on, and then I'll take some questions from you. What is the most effective team that you have been on? What made it so effective? What are your top 2 peeves about teamwork? What are your top 2 peeves about teamwork? Have you had a team member that was not relied upon? What were the behaviors that made them earn that label? What were the behaviors that made them earn the label of non-reliable? Have you had a team member who's the go-to person? What are the behaviors that made him the go-to person? One of the things that our former director, Tony Sauer, would point out repeatedly, that if you want to have opportunities, when they come to you, say yes. When somebody says, can you take this on? Yes. When they say, are you willing to lead the X project? Yes. People would not come and ask you. Your leadership would not come to you and ask you to take something on if they didn't think it needed to be done or that you could do it. I have always said yes all my career because it was an opportunity for me to demonstrate what I was capable of, what I could do. No matter what job somebody asked me to do, no matter what the difficulties, I felt that if they asked me to do it, they either felt that I had the ability to do it or would figure out how to get that ability to get it done. And every time that that opportunity presented itself and I took advantage of it, it was an opportunity for somebody who did not know me to learn a little bit more about me, because I realized I was interviewing for my next opportunity. I didn't do it because I was looking for a promotion, but the opportunities presented themselves because I took advantage of the opportunities that were handed to me. And sometimes they're not the most pleasant things. Would you mind cleaning out the storeroom? Oh, God, again? Yeah, I'll do it. Okay? Because people will see. People pay attention. Let me stop my chatter there, provide an opportunity for questions. "400 shy people? Really? And you guys are leaders?" So for those of you who did not hear, Connie asked me to share my story, how I came up from the ranks and what worked for me. I was a consumer of the Department of Rehabilitation and became self-employed, did that for 14 years. And in 1998, I joined the department as a supervisor in the field office. In 2001 or so, I was given the opportunity to apply for an auditor's position. Now, for those of you who haven't noticed, I happen to be blind. Now, I don't know of too many blind auditors, so I think I was either the first or one of the first that ever applied for that opportunity. But I thought, nothing to lose. All they can say is no. After we got through all the interviews, they gave me an opportunity, and it was life-changing to have that. I went from there to taking the examination for the managers 1 and 2, took over our business services section, and did that for 3 years. In early 2008, it was suggested to me that I should apply to become an executive with the department for our independent living and external affairs section. And it was one of those out-of-body experience, you know, where you hear something and you know how the cartoon spins his head around, like, what did I just hear? Because that's truly how I felt. It was just very, very unexpected. Nothing I ever thought I'd be doing. I applied, went through the process. May of 2008, then Governor Schwarzenegger appointed me to become the Independent Living and External Affairs Deputy Director. In 2010, I was appointed to be the Director or the Deputy Director of the Specialized Services Division within our department. And in February of this year, Governor Brown appointed me to be the Director. What was the success? What was the key? I will tell you right now that one of them is what I already shared with you. Say yes to opportunity. No matter who asked me to take on something, unless it was illegal or harmful to somebody, okay, let's be clear, I would say yes. The other thing that I have always approached my career with is I'm in competition every single day. I am in competition, have always been in competition, but never am I in competition with someone else. Never am I in competition with a colleague, a peer, or someone I don't know. The competition is internal. When I come in the morning, I look for a way to improve on what I did the day before. When I watch someone with a talent, I'm in competition to develop that talent, that ability within me. We had a chief deputy director that had this innate ability to walk into a room, and it could be of the most cantankerous, upset individuals. And she had the ability to engage with that crowd in a way that always made the conversations feasible and palatable, and everybody always appreciated that. And it took me quite some time and a lot of conversation with her. So it's competition to improve myself as a person. A lot of reading, a lot of reflection, a lot of asking myself the questions that I've shared with you. Thank you for your question, Connie. Other questions? Connie, you'll take the hard questions now, by the way. So. It sounds like somebody would like a list of those 12 things that I read off. Would it be better if somebody just emailed it to you guys?
We'll put it on the website.
Okay, and someone will, Caesar or Victoria or somebody will remind me, and I'll get that to you guys. Okay, and it's a great list. Read the book. Read the book. Read the book. Okay, because the 12 things are ideal. But believe me, reading the book is huge. Okay, so I have room. I have 5 minutes before the hook hooks me. So questions? So you didn't see the paper wrestling around up here, so you thought, what the heck is that guy doing, huh? Little Bluetooth keyboard connected to my iPhone with an app that has my presentation outline on it. Thank you. My memory is good, but it's not that good. So I'm going to repeat that question because I think it's an excellent question. I talked a lot about growing, developing your team members, bringing out the best in them. And the question is, at what point do you say, okay, I got to cut my losses. This ain't working. First of all, I've never seen a checklist that works, okay? There's a lot of checklists out there. There's a lot of stages. There's a lot of steps. Here's the thing. Here's my trigger for me. When the individual has stopped becoming an asset and started becoming a liability, and when I can honestly stand in front of the mirror and say, I tried, I gave it due diligence, then I think it's time to move on. And by the way, you better have done a whole lot of coaching. You better have understood what that motivation was for that individual. You better have made sure that you understand how they communicated. You need to be able to clearly demonstrate all of that. And not because of the progressive disciplinary process, because if you fail to do that as a leader, you could be losing a potentially valuable team member. So before you say this is no longer a good fit, you want to be sure. But to be sure, that does need to happen. And that is one of my responsibilities, has been at all stages of my career, and it will be for you as well. We have room for one more? One more. So the question is, how do you better develop your skills to bring out the best in your team to be a leader? Generally, I think I have generally correct. Okay. One of the things that I did not mention to you, but one of the things that's invaluable, it's been invaluable in my career, and I would suggest that you think about this. Feedback loops. Who are your coaches? Who are your feedback loops? Not who do you go to when you need sympathy, not who do you go to when you need a vent, although coaches could be good for that. I am the person who will go to a forum. So I'm right now at this forum, okay? And let me give you fair warning, there's 3 people in this room that will be answering this question, okay? And I'm sure they know who they are, and there's probably others that I'll catch. What did you hear in my presentation? How did I come across? How could I have improved on it? I will be asking that question, not because I'm looking to stroke my ego, because when I have the opportunity to do this presentation or a presentation in the future, I need to learn from that. So you need to have people on your team that you can go to and say, hey, Joe, how did you think that conversation went? How do you think I could have improved it? And be afraid when somebody says, oh, it was perfect. You have nothing to learn. Okay, that's one of those rubber stampers. There's a few other terms that get associated with those people. Be scared, because that person is not going to help you grow. And it doesn't mean they need to be mean or rude or anything, but you need people at all walks. You need people who are internal coaches. You need people that are personal coaches. You need people who are on your team. You need people who are outside of your team. You need to have that feedback loop from as many lenses as you can put on it. And it does not mean you take all their advice hook, line, and sinker. You have the responsibility to use their recommendations and their advice in a wise and prudent manner. But without that, you're not growing. So if you don't have those in this room, there's a number of you that could be coaches and mentors for others. Build that. This has been fun. Thank you. We look forward to watching you